The early 80s were a rough time for MGM. Though the studio had had a few hits in the previous decade, it had been severely downsized as a film distribution company due to its heavier focus on hotels and casinos. The MGM Grand in Las Vegas had almost single-handedly required the selling off of the company's music division and many of the studio backlots. With the purchase of United Artists in 1981, though, the newly rebranded MGM UA was looking to get back into the business of making movies. Hoping to seize upon the post-Star Wars space opera craze,
what are you doing? It's called getting down.
UA head David Begelman greenlit a project by Stanford Sherman, writer for television shows like Batman and The Man from U.N.C.L.E., as well as movies like Any Which Way You Can and Krull, the latter of which was under development at Columbia at the time. Sherman's script, called The Water Planet and loosely modeled after Jason and the Argonauts, was for a serious film requiring a serious budget, and Begelman initially agreed to give it a hefty $20 million, hoping to create a landmark science fiction adventure that would put MGM Studios back on the map. However, events would proceed in a decidedly different direction. Water has become the most valuable resource in the galaxy, carefully controlled by the Templars of Mithra after they destroyed the 6 planets known to be natural reservoirs. While most of the galaxy has bent to the Templars' will, a select few, known as ice pirates, have taken to boarding Templar ships and stealing their precious cargo. After kidnapping the beautiful Princess Karina, one group of pirates soon learns that a mythical 7th planet really exists, and they set out with the Templars on their tail to conquer time and space in a quest to break the Templar monopoly and free the galaxy from their tyrannical grip. Before we go any further, if you could hit that like button, I wouldn't have to be so thirsty all the time. If you really do like these videos, please hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you in advance. With that out of the way, let's get back to the subject at hand. For the Water Planet, trouble started right away. After taking a look at MGM UA's books, which showed $650 million in the red, the financial backers mandated a hard limit of $8 million for all of the studio's forthcoming projects.
If you resist, we shall kill everyone on board, including the wounded.
David Begelman and producer John Foreman, who formed Newman Foreman Productions with Paul Newman in the 60s, hired the director Stewart Raffill based on his work on the 1981 heist film High Risk. Raffill knew that the severely reduced budget would require a reworked script, so he told Foreman that the Water Planet should be given a lighter, more comedic tone. Taking as inspiration 1952's adventure comedy The Crimson Pirate, Raffill rewrote Sherman's script himself and retitled it The Ice Pirates. In mid-1982, after a string of financial failures, studio head David Begelman was forced out and eventually replaced by Frank Yablans. In the interim, Begelman's one-time lawyer and personal advocate Frank Rothman took charge. In interviews, Raffill would accuse one of these replacements of sabotaging the project, though it is unclear which man he was referring to. Whoever it was, the studio head made a derogatory remark about Paul Newman and was subsequently punched by producer John Foreman. Because of these shakeups at the studio and an overall lack of faith in the project, the Ice Pirates wasn't given much attention or internal support. For a studio desperately trying to claw its way back into relevance, it hadn't yet figured out how to nurture its own movies to make them successful. One mandate made by MGM was the casting of Robert Urich, who was known mostly for his television work on Soap in Vegas, after other actors, including Kevin Costner and William Katt, turned down the part of the lead, Jason. One of the financial backers also requested the hiring of former footballer John Matuszak as Killjoy. Matuszak is pretty good in this, with his various disguises being a fun recurring gag.
Okay, don't get tense. It's a good spot. May I? You think you could give me a sandwich or something?
But for people of my generation, he will always and forever be Sloth.
Hey, you guys!
The female lead, Princess Karina, is played by Mary Crosby, best known for being the one who shot JR, as well as being the aunt of Denise Crosby. Also appearing in the film are Michael D. Roberts, probably best known at the time as Rooster in the underappreciated detective series Baretta, a young Ron Perlman in only his second film appearance, Angelica Houston, who was a personal friend of the producer, Bruce Vilanch as the over-the-top weird Wendon, and John Carradine in an extended cameo as the Supreme Commander. Filming began in March of 1983 at MGM's Culver City Studios, with location shooting done at a Playa del Rey power plant, a theater at the California Institute of the Arts, and a Budweiser plant. Raffill went for a hodgepodge aesthetic with the idea that pirates would build their technology from spare parts and with a less polished veneer, more akin to Alien than to Star Trek. Hold up a second. I need to get something off my chest. I know this scene is supposed to be funny, but when I first saw this as a prepubescent kid, it scared the living crap out of me. As an adult, it still makes me cross my legs. Okay, now that I've said my piece, let's continue. With the limited budget, there wasn't a lot of money for special or visual effects, which were put together mostly by Praxis Filmworks under the supervision of Max W. Anderson, who'd done work on Cosmos, Altered States, and Tron. While the space sequences are pretty terrible even by 80s standards, the interior shots are admirable for how much they managed to cram into frame. There's some good makeup work and fun robot hijinks, and both the set direction and the costume design deserve a ton of credit for their imagination and attention to detail. Granted, some corners were cut, and keen eyes will see reused props from movies like Logan's Run. Also, apparently, the people of this universe are weirdly obsessed with rollerball.
That's barbaric!
Oh, yeah!
The Ice Pirates released in March of 1984 to poor reviews and a total domestic gross of $14.3 million. While slightly profitable, it was considered a failure, and few people outside of certain niche audiences remember the movie today. To be fair, the movie does suffer from its production difficulties. The plot is a bit meandering, the music wears out its welcome within the first minute, and its humor does come across as forced in a few places. However, I think the idea of simultaneously spoofing both early 80s space operas and cinematic pirate tropes is a good one, and though the movie doesn't always live up to its potential, you can tell that a lot of people in the cast and crew were trying to treat it with respect. Or at least as much respect as a movie featuring space herpes can hope for.
Space herpy.
That's disgusting!
The Ice Pirates is unquestionably a goofy, stupid, adolescent, low-budget film that can only be enjoyed by a certain cult audience. That said, I happen to be an enthusiastic member of that particular cult, and this movie just works for me. It's better as a screwball comedy than it probably would have been as a serious science fiction film, but there are one or two legitimately cool ideas in it, such as the time-warping climax. I don't like calling things guilty pleasures, because as my viewers should know by now, I don't think you should feel guilty about something that makes you happy, but this isn't the kind of movie I would recommend to just anybody. So while I can't in good conscience tell you that it is an objectively great film, I can say that a cult classic is still a classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What's your favorite screwball sci-fi flick? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support what I do even more, consider joining my Patreon to get access to bonus content, get your name in the credits, and more. My patrons get to vote on one movie I cover every single month. You can also check out my website at emcgill.com, where you'll find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Until next time, though, when a certain primate will be let loose, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
I don't mean anything by this, but is there any particular reason why it's black?
Sure. I wanted him to be perfect.